Karen, bem-vinda. Que bom ter você conosco.
Thank you for your warm welcome and wonderful introduction, Priscilla and Raquel. And I'm very excited to be here today. Even though it's remotely, I can feel the Black girl magic. My trajectory is, I started as a filmmaker.
Minha trajetória, eu comecei como cineasta e eu
technology because of the world in which we are currently in.
Da justiça e tecnologia, porque o mundo no qual vivemos, eu queria trazer a contação de história para as massas, porque essas questões vão continuar a afetar pessoas não brancas, pessoas negras, mais do que qualquer outro grupo. E é por isso
and warn them of what is
de imaginação. E eu estou muito entusiasmada de estar aqui hoje. Como eu falei, a mágica da mulher negra.
Of what's happening with them and Lyra's research and the festival, obviously.
E também compartilhar com o festival.
Kind of talk to me about this time. Yes, I put it in my calendar. So I'm still happy that I'm here.
Eu fiquei tão triste porque o Conselho Britânico falou comigo sobre viajar para o Brasil ano passado, mas eu estou feliz ainda assim de estar fazendo essa participação virtual.
Maravilha, espero que ano que vem você esteja aqui conosco. Você pode trazer referências de mulheres percussoras que têm contado a história?
Precursors, black women who have been.
So you have Ruha Benjamin, who is Associate Professor of African Studies at Princeton University in America. And she wrote the book Race Against Technology. And she is the academic looking and investigating bias in technology. And then you also have Joy, very bad at names, I can't say her name very well, Joy Buwani, and she is doing her research at MIT. And just yesterday, a documentary came out where she's featured called Coded Bias. And she as well is looking at it from a technology perspective. And I came across these amazing Black women as I continued down my path as a storyteller. So I started to work in technology and artificial intelligence in 2016 when I made my immersive experience Riot, and then facial recognition. And then 2017, I kind of went down a very deep rabbit hole because I was using that format, but then I wanted to investigate and research the technology itself within the components of my storytelling. And I worked with and still do work with a technology company called ThoughtWorks based in America, but they're based in 15 different countries. And working with the technologists, we did a lot of research into ethics and bias. So 2017, I was based in New York, and I was like, oh my God, like, what the hell? What, this is happening in the world? Why isn't people talking about this? And I realized, because I'm a public speaker and I speak around the world, and when I stand on a stage, I'm more often than not only the only person of color or Black person on the stage, but I'm often the only Black person or person of color in the whole room. So it's not something which is of interest to people. When they're talking about AI, they're talking through a white lens, a white male lens. So when I'm in the room, I'm talking about things which is going to affect Black people, women, and people of color, and working class people. And that's not of interest to the academics or scientists on the stage. They're talking computational science. And then when I talk about these things, even though people might not be in the room, they'll hear about it, and then they'll come in the room, another room. They go, hey, I saw your talk. This affects me. This relates to me. I need to be in this space. I need to find that out. I need to be part of this conversation. And I say to them, yes, you need to not just be part of the, how you can be part of the conversation is that you can, if you want to be a technologist, you need to be interrogating people in the space who are building these things. Why are you doing it in this way? Why aren't you factoring in Black people? Why aren't you factoring us into these designs? If you are factoring them in, they're detrimental to us. When I deliver a talk, I show this example of the tap that I'm sure Lyra has seen, where it's a tap and a white person, they put their hands out. And for people listening, you can Google this. A white person puts their hand under a tap and the sensor picks up the tap and the soap comes out. Then the Black person puts their hand under the tap and no soap comes out. And the white person again, the soap comes out. The Black person, no. Because the sensor's been designed for the hue of a white hand. So it doesn't dispense soap on the hue of a Black hand. And that's because the white person who designed it didn't factor us in as part of the narrative. And that's, you know, not good, particularly in the pandemic, but that is probably the smallest example that I've seen. There's examples of, or I've discovered as part of my research, there's cases in the, Lyra might be aware of, because the Compass system in America, which is designed to support judges in determining the length of time for a criminal once they've deemed them guilty. That system has been proven to be biased against Black people and people of color. It will give them longer sentences. The AI will give them longer sentences because they're Black and they're of color. I mean, but this is not something which is, if it doesn't affect them, it's not going to be championed by those people. So it's our responsibility, because it's affecting us and our community and our family, to champion this narrative. And then I, as a storyteller, to kind of create an experience which can enable people to understand what is happening through storytelling, and then empower them and then give them agency through this insight.
Eu posso comentar?
I'd love you to, please.
Sim, né? Acho que a gente está aqui exatamente para fazer essa troca de ideias, e eu acho excelente a Karen trazer esses aspectos, porque a gente fala sobre o acesso à contação de histórias. Então, né, a gente fala muito sobre representatividade, por exemplo, no audiovisual, no cinema. A gente está brigando por representação na frente das câmeras e atrás das câmeras. E agora, quando a gente avança nas questões tecnológicas, eu acho que isso que a Karen trouxe é extremamente importante, a gente também tem que avançar pensando nessas questões que são trazidas pelas novas tecnologias, né? Nessas questões éticas, nessas questões morais, nessas questões sociais, que, por exemplo, o uso da inteligência artificial, como ela falou, né, no sistema jurídico americano, como é que essa inteligência artificial está influenciando. Então, assim, o próprio sistema, né, da forma como ele distribui, como ele dá as informações para os juízes, acaba prejudicando qualquer pessoa que seja da população negra. Então, assim, não basta a gente só estarmos aqui questionando a questão da representatividade, né, nos meios audiovisuais, na política. Agora, nós também temos que estar muito atentos à questão da representatividade junto à formulação das tecnologias. Então, quem são as pessoas que estão programando as tecnologias? Quem são os responsáveis, né, por ensinar ou por doutrinar as inteligências artificiais? Então, eu acho que o nosso campo de atuação só cresce, né? E a gente tem que estar muito atento e muito crítico e estar acompanhando essa evolução, porque assim como ela mencionou, nós não estamos em muitos espaços, as pessoas negras não estão em muitos espaços, principalmente em espaços de decisão né, espaços de poder onde se tomam as mais importantes decisões. Então, eu acho que nós, como artistas, né, temos que estar atentos a essas novas perspectivas que se abrem.
Muito importante.
Okay, can I have to respond?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I see storytelling as a tool for liberation. So we have to start to tell the stories, our new stories of the worlds we want to live in, and then move towards that with agency. At the moment, the stories we're
São a isso através do protagonismo.
a system, which is really, really important. But what about creating new stories about an alternative reality? Because all our imagination and all our energy and all our strength is in the fighting. And we have to start to create alternatives at the same time. So I created as part of the development for my next project, called Consensus Gentium, I created a series of labs called Hack the Future Labs, where I brought together experts from around the world in neuroscience, in artificial intelligence like Ruha Benjamin, techno activists from Hong Kong and in the Congo and in New York, anarchist authors like Christian Williams, and behavioral psychologists. I brought together these people to create a think and action tank so that we could, and parkour, parkour and the philosophy of moving through fear, so that we could start to create new stories. And the context of the labs is we are now currently in 2020 living in a dystopic future. And if we continue down this trajectory, through, I would say, acquiescence, what is the inevitable consequence? And I create that experience for people to experience the future today. I also asked the people in the lab, if we were to create a new world that would empower us, what would that world be like? And what would we need to do today to reach that world? And I create that experience. And with that experience, we're starting to move towards it. We're starting to actualize it. So, for example, one of the key things that came out of the labs was Kumbale, a friend of mine who's an activist he's a Congo activist for the Congo, but he's now based in Ghana. And he's a techno activist, and he was a refugee. He went to America to learn technology as a child when he had to flee the Congo, and now he's back in Ghana. And one thing he said that totally blew my mind was when I said, how are we going to, this new world that we are going to go into, what do we need to do? And he said, we have to build our own code. So I said, wow, because the language that we have, what you're speaking, what I'm speaking is from the colonizer, right? And the language is what shapes our perception of reality. And the code that is being built and the fundamentals of it and how it's being used is also it starts from a white man, right? It's the language of the code is the language of a colonizer through technology. So when he said that, I was like, we have to start with the code. So now I'm going to work with him to look at how we can create new code from a cosmological lens. It's like building the code in our own Afrocentric or origin or native tongue, and looking at that from a cultural, cosmological, spiritual, technological.
Pensar sobre uma questão espiritual.
Of creating our own narrative.
Lyara, está acontecendo um bate-bola aqui. Eu já estou sentindo que você está com vontade de comentar.
Sim, quero comentar. Nossa, assim, eu acredito muito nisso, sabe, que a Karen está colocando. O quanto é importante que nós tenhamos o domínio das ferramentas, e que nós sejamos propositivos nessa construção dessas novas tecnologias, que a gente não fique só como reféns, que nós, artistas, pensadores, programadores, cientistas, não brancos, negros, tenhamos acesso à formulação dessas tecnologias. Isso é extremamente necessário. Quando a gente fala da questão da governança, por exemplo, das tecnologias, da governança da inteligência artificial, é disso que nós estamos falando, de dar parâmetros para essas tecnologias que englobem a todos, que não seja uma visão restrita de uma parte da população, que geralmente é a parte que tem mais poder de decisão. Então, que geralmente são homens brancos que têm esse poder de decisão. E a gente tem homens brancos programando essas novas tecnologias. Então, é extremamente importante que o acesso a essas tecnologias seja diversificado. Mas como a Karen já colocou e como eu tinha falado, esse acesso não vem fácil. Ele tem que ser conquistado. E essa conquista tem que ser, a gente tem que brigar para manter essa conquista.
Why I got to hack the Future Labs was that with my work Riot and my other work, what I developed further, and Perception.io in 2017, 18, 19, I felt the answer in 2017 was democratizing AI, because I think you may have heard of something called the internet and email, right? And that was for the government and the military for decades before it came to us, the people. And that cannot happen with AI. It cannot happen. But we can't compete at the moment with them financially. So we have to democratize these applications and these technologies so that we can be a part of it. So with my work, the Riot Project, I made a film using AI. So they have a film and you have the AI. And I took off the film and I made the AI available open source, facial recognition AI. And that is called EmoPie, and you can Google it and then you can access it and then anybody can use it because everybody should be able to use it. Yes, this conversation about regulation, governance, and transparency was something I was really looking into in 2000 and thought was one of the only answers in 2017 and 18 and even early 19. And that's something which is featured as part of the documentary Coded Bias, which is out now. But there's so many more conversations and so many more solutions, and democratizing is one aspect of it, because how they will use artificial intelligence and facial recognition in terms of big companies and governments is more about control and surveillance and how they will benefit commercially. How we would use artificial intelligence and facial recognition as a community is very different. I believe that we would use that for more protection, more things which will empower our community. So that is a big part of it, democratizing it. But there's other parts as well, building, because democratizing it and regulation and governance is still a kind of talking to them like, hey, we need this, hey, we need that, we're fighting them. But building our own codes, we don't need permission to do that. We don't need to ask them, we don't need to fight them, we just have to get together. So there needs to be these things happening in correspondence to each other. People who that's their calling is fighting for the regulation, the transparency. We need to change what you're doing. And then other people's like, we need to build our own systems, whether it's through open source or through something or through building our own code. But that to me is fundamental, because building our own networks and systems and platforms and technologies, that is the next level of narrative. Then we can control those platforms and systems, and then we can control or at least influence our reality. Now we are becoming the authors. Now we are in control. Storytelling is not just something which is something that you tell someone and then it disappears. Storytelling is something which influences and directly impacts our reality. And the stories from my childhood have created the world in which I live in now. And the stories which we tell ourselves and each other are creating the world around us. You know, so we have to start to be even more deliberate and intentional in the stories that we're telling. And that's why I say the Future Labs was about using storytelling as a tool of liberation, and use storytelling to actualize and influence and create a new reality, or new realities, I should say.
Eu acho que quando você coloca, Priscila, essa questão também de que é uma questão financeira, e eu acho que a Karen traz aqui estratégias que são alternativas a essa questão financeira. Eu acho que o que a gente tem são as empresas, né? As pessoas que trabalham, que fazem essas programações das novas tecnologias, já perceberam, né, o quão necessário é ter uma pluralidade na construção dessas tecnologias. Mesmo assim, é muito importante que a gente esteja atento a isso. Então, a gente tem que ter artistas, a gente tem que ter pensadores, críticos, filósofos, atentos à construção dessas tecnologias, né? Para estar apontando também onde estão os problemas o tempo todo. E isso tem que ser constante, né? Tem que ser uma vigilância constante. E quando a gente fala de práticas criativas, elas são super importantes, né? O storytelling é importantíssimo para a nossa formação. É importantíssimo para que a gente consiga se compreender enquanto população negra, para que a gente consiga entender as nossas histórias, para que a gente consiga se expressar para o mundo. Então, quando ela fala da importância desse movimento, né, de estarmos juntos, da gente se agregar, então, por exemplo, um projeto como o dela, que faz um laboratório, que agrega pessoas de diferentes partes do mundo, né, com diferentes expertises, né, então técnicos, neurocientistas, enfim, tudo isso é muito importante, porque são nesses centros de pensamento e de produção de conteúdo e de reflexão, desse tipo de lugar que vai sair a reflexão, que vai sair o questionamento e que vão sair obras de arte, né? Aqui no Brasil, o exemplo que eu tenho de trabalho é o trabalho que a gente faz na USP, com o Lab Arte Mídia, que é o nosso laboratório de experiências com mídia, com arte, tecnologia e mídia. E o que a gente busca é também, eu acho que talvez um pouco diferente da experiência da Karen, porque a gente está dentro de um ambiente acadêmico, né? Mas também esse exercício de propor um laboratório de reflexão e um laboratório que seja de reflexão prática. Isso que eu acho muito importante e que a Karen faz também no laboratório dela, né? Porque é uma reflexão que se dá tanto em termos conceituais, em termos críticos, mas é uma reflexão que ela acontece na forma prática, na forma de obra. Então, quando a Karen, por exemplo, desenvolveu o Riot, ou agora os novos projetos, né, aquilo se torna uma obra pública que vai afetar as pessoas, né, que vai chegar nas pessoas. Então, é o que a gente tenta desenvolver também, né, desenvolver obras críticas, obras poéticas, obras lúdicas, que tragam essas novas histórias, que tragam outras perspectivas, outros pontos de vista sobre a contação de histórias.
Karen, eu assisti o seu TED em que você falou da importância de hackear o nosso cérebro, né? Como que no futuro a gente hackear o nosso cérebro. E agora saíram várias pesquisas que as crianças que estão tendo acesso à tecnologia muito cedo, elas estão perdendo algumas habilidades essenciais do relacionamento, inclusive habilidades motoras. Então, como que você acha que a gente pode equilibrar tanto o processo do acesso à tecnologia e o retorno das crianças a fazerem coisas básicas como o próprio brincar?
Oh, wow. Okay, I have about 5 answers to that question. Before I answer that, I just want to comment on Lyra's comment in terms that it's not. I just want to add to what she said. I mean, I don't think it's about money. I think it's just about our resolve and our spirit as people. Like, all our ancestors were in slavery. And if they can survive that and we're here today, this is a piece of cake. And I'm not saying that it's not difficult, but the horrors of the trauma of what our predecessors have been through and survived, and we're here to tell the tale, we can do this. Money is not, we don't need the money. We'll figure out a way, like they figured out a way. We're going to figure out a way together. And they came together as a community and they strategized and they fought and they died and they sacrificed for their freedom. And that it's again going to have to happen. You know, it's just, the technology is a tool of oppression. And with the labs, the first lab I had was hacking the self, because you have to hack the self. The second lab was to hack the system, because you have to understand the system. And the third lab was to hack the tech. And the tech is just an extension of a system of oppression. Okay, it's intangible, it's unquantifiable, it's impossible to fight. But if we can understand the system of oppression, we can then understand how to combat and have victory against the tech. But we can't just look at the tech in isolation, we have to understand the system of oppression. That's just what I wanted to add. And in terms of young people, and play and technology, that's another thing that's come up a lot in the lab. So one of the contributors at the lab is Forrest, and he's an elite parkour coach. He's like a parkour trainer, amazing, from around the world. And he happens to have as well 2 children. He's a married family man. And he has a big concern about technology because he sees his children becoming more and more inside the computer every day, right? And with parkour is about the using the physicality of the body to reprogram the neuron pathways in the brain. So we talk a lot about, because I'm a free runner myself, and free running is my most biggest, and parkour my biggest influence on my work, is that how you can empower yourself through movement, through using your body. You're building new motor skills, and then you're understanding how to kind of stimulate your brain. How you're moving through obstacles through parkour in your environment. You're understanding how to move through obstacles in life. How you're moving through fear doing parkour, you can understand how to master yourself and move through fear in life. There's transferable skills, cognitive skills. And we do that through play. You know, it's through play. We're having fun, we're laughing, it's serious, can be dangerous, but we're having fun and we're playing. And that's how human beings tend to learn the most kind of, I don't know, the word is maybe say it's effortlessly, but naturally, through play. And as we become adults, we kind of lose that sense of enjoyment of play and wonder and excitement and learning through it. So through the current project, the Consensus Gentium, we are factoring into it this aspect of physicality as we become more and more kind of entrenched in a digital world, in a digital realm. We understand the importance of the physical, and we are making sure to infuse that within my current immersive experience, which is in development.
Eu acho que quando a gente fala da questão do corpo, tem um aspecto muito interessante dessas tecnologias com as quais a gente está trabalhando agora, que é a inclusão do corpo junto às tecnologias. Porque até então a gente usava muito as tecnologias digitais, né? Pensando nas tecnologias digitais, a gente usava muito pouco o corpo. Então, eram tecnologias destinadas ao uso intelectual, né? O que é interessante quando a gente avança no uso dessas tecnologias é perceber o quanto o corpo começa a ganhar mais relevância na própria prática tecnológica. Então, quando a gente fala dessa questão com as crianças e com os jovens, nesse sentido, eu acho que também essas novas tecnologias, então, por exemplo, quando a gente fala de realidade aumentada ou realidade virtual, né, de práticas imersivas, você está tirando o corpo daquela posição passiva e você coloca o corpo como parte da experiência. Então, você tem uma experiência tecnológica que também acontece com o seu corpo. Então, eu acho que, nesse sentido, essas tecnologias trazem uma outra dimensão para essa relação entre corpo, mente e tecnologia, né? Que a gente ainda está aprendendo a lidar com isso. É um grande desafio.
That's fun. I mean, we are black people of color, black people, women are more right-sided part of their brain. Men and white people tend to be more left-sided. So we are kind of coming onto this technology behind them and their ways. And we're saying, hold on a second, we want to do it our way now. From my side, have my lens, from my black lens, from my right side of the brain lens. So we're going to create a different type of experience which will enrich and empower us in different ways. And that's why we need to get as deep into this kind of narrative as possible, not just with the storytelling, but with the code.
E é importante a gente brigar pela democratização do acesso, né? O que a gente está vendo agora é que essas tecnologias estão começando a se tornar um pouco mais acessíveis, e eu acho que essa tem que ser uma grande bandeira, que essas tecnologias se tornem acessíveis, porque a gente, assim como a Karen bem identificou, nós estamos num momento de crise, nós estamos num momento de transição, nós vamos viver uma grande mudança tecnológica. Então, a forma como a gente se relaciona com a tecnologia está mudando, né? Essa mudança já está acontecendo, ela já é possível, mas ela ainda não é acessível a todos, né? Então, o que a gente quer é que ela se torne acessível a todos. Mas sempre mantendo um ponto de vista crítico também com relação a ela, né? Com relação a essas tecnologias.
Yes, just to add to that point is, yes, I was saying that there's a scientist, an epigenetic scientist who I very much respect, called Bruce Lipton, and he has a quote, crisis precipitates change. So I agree 100%. We are in a potential time of great transition. But what is happening is that we are so scared and fearful. It's hard, and also we're in kind of survival mode, that it's hard to probably see this for what it is. And that I really want people to, I'm urging people to kind of almost step back a step from themselves, to kind of see that, yes, this is really heavy shit that's happening. But at the same time, we need to be able to move through fear. And that's a big part of my work. Because lots of things that I feel that fear is being weaponized, the narratives that we're being told, and that we have to start to discern and deliberately create our own narratives for each other and ourselves in the interest of our communities. Okay, so I tell you about my work and a bit about my progression of my practice. So Riot put people in the middle of a riot environment, and I was inspired to create that because of the Ferguson riots and how I was seeing Black people and people of color portrayed within social media and media in general as looters or, you know, troublemakers. And I was like, if you could have a visceral understanding of why people would go through that or put themselves through that because of the level and scale of injustice. So I wanted to put people in a riot environment with a context and let their emotions navigate through. And I used artificial intelligence and facial recognition to do that. So you're not in a VR headset, you stand there and you're surrounded by a projection of a film and ambisonic sound and scent of like smoke and debris around you of like a riot on the floor, like there's glass to transport you there. And you come across characters in the riot. You come across a character who is looting.
Então, tem nesse espaço que está ali saqueando que diz, olha, para mim, é a única chance.
Just trying to help her out. Things have been really, really hard. Are you going to come with me? And some people, when they hear this impassioned plea, go, oh my God, yeah, let's do it together, you know? So I'm trying, and then I'm showing like many different kind of sides that, you know, of why they're in there. And one, people who aren't looters, people who are just there because of the level of injustice, and they're communicating with them and understanding these things. And yeah, and so then I did the perception IO, because I went down this AI rabbit hole and understood bias and ethics. And then I started looking at how it was being used within the criminal justice system, how it's being used currently within the education system. And I was like, wow, because I can argue with a biased or racist cop, right? But I can't argue with a biased or racist algorithm. There's no getting around that. And when they say things like defund the police, yeah, defund the police, but what are you going to replace it with? You're not going to replace it with people that look like us. You're going to replace it with systems designed by those people. So there's systems of oppression and systems which have implicit bias built in. They're not, it's going to be even worse, I would say. So I created Perception IO. I was commissioned by Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Museum.
Então, eu trabalhei no Museu Smithsonian e eu criei espaço virtual.
You're the police officer and you come into contact with a white and a black person. And you are, it's like you're the training system for the AI. And if you feel that you are threatened by the black person, maybe as the police officer, you may arrest them or shoot them. And you find out afterwards, if because there's a black and a white person, but for the black character plays a criminal and they play a mental health person with mental health issues. And the white person plays a criminal and someone with mental health issues. But there's signs within the narrative that if you look carefully, you can see what they are. And afterwards you find out. So it makes people aware of two things. One, that hold on, if you maybe shot, for example, the black man because stereotypically you felt threatened, maybe that's because of your implicit bias, because that person could have mental health issues. And also it makes you aware of how bias can be built into design. People have this perception that computers make themselves. They're programmed by people, and the systems will be programmed with their own implicit bias. So when it comes to something like building an AI system for law enforcement, who's going to discern if somebody's a threat or not? Oh, I'll give you an example. We don't have to even think that far ahead. On death row, the biggest cases of black men who are there, who are innocent, but have been guilty, are ones that have been, a witness has said that's the black person, and it wasn't that black man. So the witness has, I don't know what the term is, but they've kind of, they've kind of categorized the person through. And what has happened in Detroit this year, an AI has said we have to arrest that person. And when they arrested the person, it was the AI misdiagnosed that was the right person. They thought that black man was guilty when it wasn't that black man, it was another black man. Exactly what happens in human condition has been programmed into the AI. And why that has happened is that facial recognition is not as accurate on black people and people of color as it is on white people, because when they're labeling these data sets or creating them, their expertise or their interest or their focus or their commitment on it being accurate is more with white people than black people or people of color. So they've programmed that inaccuracy into the AI. So the AI mirrors the human condition of being inaccurate in its recognition of black people and black features. Two have the exact same consequences by design.
Wow.
So that's why I created the Perception IO, to kind of make people aware of these things, make them because this is heavy shit, and most people just want to pay their bills, right? And they just want to maybe get out the house. So this is something, they maybe want to go to a party, just forget this, get with their boyfriend or girlfriend. And I just, through a storytelling experience, I can invite them in, I can captivate their interest. It can be cool, it can be fun, it can have great music, it can have great tech. But when they come out, they're like, wow, I didn't know that. And they'll stand and they'll talk to somebody else who go like, wow, I didn't know that, for like an hour. And sometimes I'll go away and I'll come back and I'm like, these cats are still there talking about this. Yeah, because it connected with them, it resonated with them, and they come back, they say, wow, I didn't know, thank you. What can I do? Tell me what I can do. I've spoken or shown my work at events and I haven't moved from a spot for maybe 2 hours because people's like, tell me what to do, what should I do? And I'll talk to every single one of those people because we have to come together as a community and we all have a different role to play. And that's the point of my work, is that it stimulates and it sparks that in people. It inspires them to say, we can do it, because they're just not aware of the implications of what is to come. And that's why, as a storyteller from the future, my objective is that I've come back to enable people to survive what is to come through the power of storytelling.
Uau, maravilhoso. Quero que você venha trazer para o Brasil, para a gente poder experimentar e levar pessoas a vivenciarem isso também.
Nossa, excepcional.
I would love to bring my new project, which is currently in development. My new project, Consensus Gentium. Yeah, my new project, Consensus Gentium, will be, I will have the first prototype in spring, and hopefully the finished piece by this time next year. And that is enabling people to experience the future today. And the plan is that, because there's going to be 3 immersive worlds, one very bad and one very good, the one that we create the alternative for, and another one that I'm just figuring out. And the one which is very good is the one where we build the code. And I'm intending to go to Africa to do that, whether real or virtual, but I'm hoping for real, to start to actually physically do that, and then have an understanding of how that's going to impact our reality as Black people and empower us and people of color. So yeah, I'd love to, I'd be honored. We should really talk about this offline to bring it to Brazil, because anywhere I go where there's people of color and Black people, it just resonates, you know, it just like this, it just does something to their spirit, because they're like, I didn't know. And it just connects with them. And it's just because they don't know, you know, once they know, they're just like, oh, what can I do? What can I do? I can't let this happen. This is affecting me, you know? So I would love to build, and also the political climate and the culture. Oh, I'd love to bring it there, because it's the same all over the world, you know? It's the same story of oppression. It's just different faces of the oppressor.
Estou enlouquecida querendo conhecer de perto as suas obras, Karen, muito. Vamos costurar isso, né, para que 21 aí mais para frente seja poderoso e produtivo, que a gente consiga fazer essas trocas, porque eu acho que são obras que a gente precisa experimentar, né? É aquilo que a gente está falando, são trabalhos que trazem o corpo, que trazem a reflexão, que trazem o espírito crítico, que trazem a sensibilização estética, ética das pessoas. Então, a gente precisa ter contato com essas obras, e obras desenvolvidas com essas tecnologias, né? Com essas tecnologias de ponta, com essas tecnologias que estão com o que há de mais atual e de mais poderoso em termos de tecnologia. Acho que é extremamente importante. Aqui no Brasil, a gente também está tentando, né? Estamos desenvolvendo nossas histórias, nossos projetos, nossa potencialidade. Eu recentemente tive o prazer de ter um projeto meu, que eu estou desenvolvendo com o Lab Arte Mídia, lá na USP, um projeto que se chama Diasporáticas. Esse projeto acabou de receber um prêmio e aí finalmente a gente vai conseguir produzir o projeto, porque ele estava em desenvolvimento, e é um projeto de uma experiência em realidade virtual, e onde eu falo de dois aspectos que para mim são muito caros, né? A questão da ancestralidade e também a questão da diáspora negra no mundo. Então, é um projeto com 5 personagens mulheres, 4 mulheres negras, uma mulher branca, e que passam, todas elas têm um histórico de ter passado pela diáspora. E aí existe uma construção em realidade virtual onde a gente acessa um pouco da história dessas mulheres. Então, e uma coisa que eu acho muito importante que a gente trabalha e que para mim sempre foi uma reflexão o tempo todo, desde que eu trabalho com tecnologia, desde as práticas com audiovisual já era isso, mas quando eu fui trabalhar com as tecnologias, um pouquinho depois da Karen, comecei em 2017, a Karen começou em 2016, né? Muito também entender como é a representação do corpo negro dentro dessas novas tecnologias. Então, por exemplo, eu comecei a experimentar obras de realidade virtual e nunca tinha pessoas negras nas obras. As obras eram sempre feitas com personagens brancos, com mulheres brancas, homens brancos, né? Quando você vai pesquisar a tecnologia e você vai buscar até no Google as imagens, você não acha imagem, eu não achava imagens para ilustrar uma aula, por exemplo, que não fosse só com corpos brancos, com pessoas brancas. Então, isso sempre foi uma questão muito cara, muito pertinente para mim. Então, assim, de construir obras onde exista uma outra forma de representação da figura das pessoas negras. Então, e principalmente para mim, no meu caso ainda mais caro, a questão da mulher negra, né? Como representar o corpo, como representar a história da mulher negra com essas novas tecnologias e fugindo dos estereótipos que a gente já conhece, né? Dos nossos vícios de representação, porque somos, na maioria das vezes, representadas pelo olho do colonizador, né? Então, como é que a gente muda essa representação? A gente muda essa representação colocando o nosso ponto de vista, como nós queremos nos ver, como eu quero ver a representação das mulheres negras. Então, nesse sentido, são com essas questões que eu estou me deparando nesse projeto. E é extremamente importante ter um espaço acolhedor dentro da universidade para poder trabalhar com esses temas. Eu fico muito, muito feliz de estar conseguindo conquistar esses espaços também.
Incrível, Lyara. É muito importante porque é a mistura da academia com a prática, né? Você está vivenciando isso, estando no doutorado e tendo essa oportunidade de criar essas atividades. Eu fico muito feliz de saber e de poder divulgar que aqui na USP tem mulher negra praticando, criando e projetando, né? Projetando o futuro também. O tempo passou muito rápido. Queria agradecer imensamente a participação de vocês, por terem compartilhado conosco seus trabalhos. Muito obrigada, Karen. Espero que ano que vem você esteja aqui com a gente. Obrigada, Lyara, e que vocês possam continuar trocando e, quem sabe, construindo projetos juntas, né?
I'm very excited to be part of this conversation, and I'm even more excited to be there next year and meet Lyara and yourself in person and just explore all potential opportunities, because I just see how it's the same story. We have the same narrative wherever we are as Black people and people of color all over the world. And it's important for us to connect, to be empowered and create new narratives for ourselves and our community. Thank you, Lyara. That's amazing.
Foi uma conversa ótima, rendeu muito. Muito obrigada por partilhar. Espero que as nossas histórias continuem aí se cruzando, e frutificando. Vamos construir isso.
Obrigada. Você assistiu uma conversa em parceria da Feira Preta em parceria com o British Council e até a próxima. Tchau.